Yo, what's up guys? You got PokeaimMD here with episode 2 of my Pokemon Breakdown series, where I basically take a Pokemon and I tell you all about its stats, what it's weak to, what it's good with in this current meta, the pros and cons of the Pokemon, team options, checks and counters, and the common sets that this Pokemon is currently using. Now, if you have watched my first episode where I broke down Azumarill, this episode is actually tornadus-t. If you guys did not know, I'm breaking down tornadus-Therian-Form, a personal favorite of mine. In the first episode, I asked for your feedback, and you guys did give it, so thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate the support as well as the feedback. It helps me make these episodes better. It helps me make them more fluent, and I think it also helps the watcher, or the watcher. I was going to say the reader because I was thinking about books, but it also helps the person who's watching the video learn better, or learn easier. This series is mainly aimed at people trying to get into competitive, but also it's a refresher for veterans, so thank you everybody for the support. Now, like I said, the Pokemon that we will be talking about today is Tornadus-Therian-Form. Now, Tornadus-Therian-Form has some pretty decent stats all around. Base 79 HP, base 100 attack, base 80 defense, base 110 special attack, 90 base special defense, and 121 speed. So it has that great speed, as you can see, pretty decent attack, as well as above average special attack, which, having some bulk in base 90 and base 80, it's not the worst that it could be, while having that base 79 HP. So this is equal to 580 in total. Because it is pure flying type, it is weak to electric, rock, and ice, while it resists fighting, bug, and grass, and does have that immunity to ground type. So it can switch into any ground type it wants to for days, or any ground type attack rather. Now, as with all Pokemon, there are pros and cons to Tornadus. The pros, of course, being one of its abilities, or its only ability, Regenerator. Now, Regenerator is a great ability because it restores 1/3 of the Pokemon's max HP when it switches out, meaning that if my Tornadus comes in and I take 25% from Stealth Rock, I'll be at 75%, yes, but when I switch back out, I'll regain all that HP, so I'll be back at 100 just because it's 1/3 of my max HP. It has great speed, as we said. It has base 121 speed. That is faster than so many Pokemon in the OU tier, which of course Tornadus resides in, and in the next slide, or the next thing on your screen, I'll be talking about the mons that it does outspeed. And it has a really good move pool. It has access to two of some of the best moves in the game, and I was thinking about it. Do I really want to say that? But I do. It has access to knockoff and U-turn. Knockoff, of course, getting rid of your opponent's item, and of course U-turn giving you that momentum. It's the move that is a prediction without a prediction. And it also has great moves in general, being Hurricane, Superpower, Taunt, Heat Wave, Grass Knot, Icy Wind, to name a few. It has a great move pool. Now, there are some cons to this Pokemon. Its strongest stab attack, which is Hurricane, is a base 120, base 110, excuse me. I forgot that they lowered the special attack of it. It's a base 110 special flying type attack, which it very much abused because of its base 110 special attack, but unfortunately it only has 70% accuracy, so unless you're using it like on a rain team, it's not always going to hit. It has no reliable recovery outside of Regenerator, meaning that it doesn't have access to Roost or Recover or Soft Load or anything along those lines, which doesn't necessarily hold it back as much due to its Regenerator ability, but it can very well be worn down by repeated attacks, as Tornadus does like to switch into certain attacks, as we will be covering. And its flying type, while giving it only 3 weaknesses, can also hold it back because it only gives it 3 immunities, meaning that chances are Tornadus is going to take an attack that it's not going to resist. And the thing with that is, if you're using a more offensive set, it's going to be harder for you to switch in. If you're using the defensive set, which we will be talking about, it'd be a little bit easier for you to switch in. But as I said, it has great speed, being able to outspeed a lot of the common and some of the fastest Pokemon in the OU metagame, being Thundurus, being Mega Metagross, Alakazam, Gengar, Raikou, Latios, and Latias. Those are a few Pokemon to name the least that Tornadus can actually outspeed. It's just a solid Pokemon in general. Now, the first set we're going to be talking about today is the Life Orb Hurricane set. Now, this set, I actually changed it a bit from what the Smogon spread has, just because I feel that the Smogon spread is a little bit outdated. They didn't have max speed on this thing. Now, the set we are running is Hurricane Superpower, U-Turn, and Taunt with a naive nature. Of course, you can run Timid. This maxes out our speed because we run 252 speed EVs, 180 special attack, and 76 attack with a Life Orb. Now, the reason we are running max speed and the reason I changed it from what Smogon had at 216 is because there are Pokemon like Alakazam that Tornadus is going to want to outspeed. One of its niches, or one of its, not even a niche, it's one of its best qualities is that it has that high speed. So being able to outspeed Pokemon like Alakazam definitely works for it. The 76 attack actually allow you to OHKO, Excadrill, as well as Tyranitar with the superpower. The rest is pumped into special attack. And of course the set runs U-Turn as well as Taunt. Now U-Turn of course giving you that switch advantage, and Taunt letting you break down fatter teams like Pokemon like Skarmory. If it's not Spadef 1, it's not going to be taking the Hurricanes that well at all. But if it's not packing a move or an attacking move, which some of them are not, some of them don't run Iron Head, some of them don't run Brave Bird. Actually, Brave Bird has not something that has been run in a while, or at least on the common Skarmory. But it allows you to basically stop Pokemon from recovering. Fatter Pokemon, stall teams, for example, rely on Pokemon like Skarmory, like Chansey, not specifically Chansey, but Pokemon like that to be able to take on Tornadus because they can roost stall them, and then Chansey, of course, can take its special attacks, but of course it fears the knockoff as well, which is something that you have to see when you're facing Tornadus. You don't know what set it is, which is another good point that it has. Now, again, this speed basically maximizes its speed. I think that for every Tornadus, and I'm gonna stress this, I believe on Tornadus, doesn't matter what set of Tornadus you're running, if you're playing in the OU tier, now this doesn't go for any type of league or anything, and maybe you don't need this specific thing, but if you are playing in the OU tier, maximize its speed, because you don't want to lose a game because you lost the speed tie to an opposing Tornadus. That would suck, to say the least. But yeah, basically the rest is just pumped into special attack. That way it can spam one of its best moves. You could go for a hasty nature on this if you really wanted to, but honestly, naive is preferred simply because the Pokemon that are going to be hitting Tornadus before it hits it are going to be Pokemon with priority, unless they're like a Weavile. So Pokemon like Bisharp, like Scizor are going to be hitting them with Sucker Punches, with Bullet Punches respectively, and you don't really want to make yourself weaker or less defensive in your defense stats. I don't know, I don't know how to word that, but you basically don't want to make your defense be lower than it needs to be, because maybe you can take those hits and knock them out with your superpower, or knock out a weakened Scizor with Hurricane, assuming you hit. Of course, this set does have some drawbacks. The offensive set is strong. It's strong as hell. Life Orb Hurricane is super strong, but of course it costs at the accuracy of Hurricane, as well as the the defense drop from superpower, the lack of bulk that the next set that we'll be talking about has. But offensive Tornadus, definitely a strong mon. I'll be talking about team options later. I decided from the first video that I'll be talking about team options and stuff at the end. That way I don't have to repeat Pokemon. Now, the next set we're going to be talking about is one of my personal favorite of Tornadus. It is the Assault Vest set. Now, this is one of the most common sets in the OU tier, simply because of its ability to take hits. And I'll be showing you guys the calcs in a sec of what it can actually take on. But the Assault Vest set runs Hurricane, Focus Blast, or Heat Wave, U-Turn, and Knockoff, of course, with Regenerator ability. And again, the Smogon set did not have max speed. I changed it just because Pokemon like Alakazam are more common than when they uploaded that version of the Pokemon. And of course, I'll link that down below, because one thing I did say before, and I'll say it again, a lot of what I'm saying you can definitely read up on the Smogon decks, but I wanted to break it down. I wanted to say it because some people learn better being taught something than they do reading something. So this set runs 132 HP, max speed, and then 124 special attack. Now the 124 special attack is used that way. Keldeo takes 97% minimum from Hurricane, so it's a complete KO after Stealth Rock. Of course, you can run Focus Blast or Heat Wave. I like to run Heat Wave personally because it gives me a Scizor check as well as a Pokemon, as well as a way to stop Ferrothorn and do any damage, because Focus Blast does not do crap to Ferrothorn. Focus Blast does not do crap to T-Tar, considering it is 4 times weak to it. Most T-Tar variants bar Scarf will live, though Scarf is the most common. And of course you still have Hurricane, the most spammable move, and then you have 2 of the best moves in the game, which I mentioned earlier, Knock Off and U-Turn, giving this Tornadus a lot of utility. The Assault Vest boosts its Spadef by 1.5 at the cost of course not being able to use non-attacking moves, but this Tornadus does not run any non-attacking moves, so it doesn't really matter. The other Tornadus, of course, ran Taunt, but this one is just a pivot. Now, Tornadus-T with the Assault Vest is, like I said, a great pivot. It can switch into so many special attackers in the game. Like I said, it did have the bulk. When I was going over its stats, it did have bulk, and this set really abuses that bulk as well as high speed. Now, Knock Off and U-Turn are great because Pokemon that generally want to come in on Tornadus, they don't appreciate their item being gone. Unless they're a Mega, they really do not appreciate their item being gone. You have U-Turn for the switch advantage to give yourself momentum. You can either predict the switch, or when something's in and it's slower than you can go for U-Turn and then switch to an appropriate check or counter. And like I said, I like to run Heat Wave over Focus Blast simply because it just does more in the long run. It hits Skarmory, it hits Scizor, it hits Ferrothorn, while Focus Blast, of course, hits Ferrothorn for nothing. It does like less than half. Hits Spadef Heatran, of course, doing less than half as well, and then of course hitting T-Tar. And other options, of course, Superpower as well if you want to hit T-Tar for more damage. It doesn't do too much to max HP Heatran without any investment. But Timid Nature is generally preferred because the extra attacks that that Naive or Hasty would give you doesn't really boost or give you any kills with Knockoff or U-Turn. And obviously you don't want to have minus Spadef on a Pokemon running an Assault Vest. You want to have as much bulk as possible. So the 132 HP actually allows Tornadus to take on so many strong special attackers in the metagame. To name a few, you have Gengar. As you can see on your screen, there's a calc 252 special attack Life Orb Gengar Sludge Wave, one of Gengar's strongest moves against Tornadus, does 44 to 52% to the 132 HP Assault Vest Tornadus. So most of the time that's not even a 2 KO. And of course you do outspeed, you can take it out with the knockoff, getting rid of its Life Orb, making it do a lot less. And of course Shadow Ball never does half, it does 37 to 44.5%. And this is Gengar. One of the main reasons to use Tornadus is because it is an offensive pivot to Gengar. Gengar is so scary for so many teams. It is really hard to switch into, and Tornadus just stops it completely. The only variant of Gengar you would have to worry about with Tornadus, or this Tornadus per se, would be a Life Orb Icy Wind plus Sludge Wave Gengar with Stealth Rock up. So it needs so many like conditions for Gengar to be able to beat Tornadus. Of course, being burnt by Will-O-Wisp would suck as well. But the next Pokemon that we have is Choice Specs Keldeo, one of these hardest hitting special attackers in the game. Choice Specs Keldeo's Hydro Pump versus 132 Spadef Assault Vest, or 132, excuse me, HP Assault Vest Tornadus does 58 to 69.5%. So that's 69% because Pokemon rounds down. So that's straight up 69%. Meaning that it can only 2 KO you after Stealth Rock. And your Hurricane does 97% minimum to it. Of course you have to hit, but they of course have to hit as well. And even Spec Scald does less than half most of the time, doing 42 to 50%. And another Pokemon that is a hard hitter in the OU tier, Latios. Life Orb Latios, one of the most common defoggers in the game. Life Orb Latios' Draco Meter does 60 to 71%. And Life Orb Psyshock does 62 to 73%. So those are both not KOs after Stealth Rock. And of course, you can switch in a Latios. You can U-turn on out of there. You can knock off. Of course, after it drops a Draco, its attack stat is going to, or a special attack stat is going to be lowered by 2. And if you go for knockoff, you'll actually be able to live another Draco meter after that, assuming you were at full upon switching and then took the 60 to 71%. And you'll be able to U-turn on out of there, get the Regenerator back. So those are just a few Pokemon that Tornadus is honestly just able to switch into. Now, I want to talk about, I'm debating actually talking about the checks encounters or the team options first. I think I'll save checks encounters for the end. Of course, I want your guys' input on this because I will be doing my best to make this series better or easier for the user or whoever's watching to learn. But there's a lot of Pokemon that are good options with Tornadus. Pokemon such as Skarmory, Latios, and Latias, they are great defoggers for Tornadus, and it also allows Pokemon like Latios and Latias, they also resist electric attacks, which is one of the few attacks that Tornadus is weak to, while Tornadus can take hits from Pokemon that threaten Skarmory, such as fire types. And of course, Skarmory can set up hazards for Tornadus, allowing it to do a lot with its utility moves in knockoff and U-turn. Hazards plus knockoff is deadly, and of course the Life Orb, Latias can Healing Wish back up to it, Latios can defog for it, and also get rid of its checks encounters. On a more bulkier teams, you can run Pokemon like Slowbro, Hippowdon, Ferrothorn, and Heatran. Hippowdon resisting that rock typing that Tornadus is weak to, as well as electric attacks. So Hippowdon being able to switch into electric attacks and rock type Pokemon such as Tyranitar that threaten Tornadus, and Pokemon such as Raikou, such as Manectric that also threaten Tornadus. Slowbro is great because not only does Tornadus get rid of Pokemon like Venusaur that threaten Slowbro, or they also knock off items from Pokemon like Rotom, which can stop a potential Calm Mind Slowbro with burns plus Volt Switches plus that momentum right there. Slowbro stops Pokemon such as Mega Charizard X, which can take full advantage of Tornadus, which can set up on it, bar confusions. That's also something I didn't talk about. Hurricane has a 30% chance to confuse, so it's an amazing move to spam, assuming you hit. Slowbro also stops Dragon Dance Dragonite, which can also set up on Tornadus unless they're packing something like Icy Wind. Ferrothorn resists electric attacks, gets up hazards, and like I said, Tornadus can switch into Pokemon. Similar to Skarmory, Tornadus can switch into Pokemon that threaten Ferrothorn, such as fighting types and fire types due to its bulk. And of course, Heatran is nice because it gets rid of those steel types that Tornadus might have trouble dealing with. Those bulky steel types like Spadef Skarmory, which doesn't take anything from an Assault Vest Heat Wave. Pokemon like Jirachi, Pokemon like even Ferrothorn, which can wall certain sets. So Heatran is a good option, and they just make good cores. Tornadus being able to switch into the Pokemon that threaten Heatran, such as ground types, such as fighting types, and to be more specific, you could say Pokemon like Conkeldurr, you could say Pokemon like Hippowdon, Pokemon like Landorus-T, and of course Heatran gets up Stealth Rock for Tornadus, boosting that utility in U-turn. More offensive teammates would be Pokemon such as Mega Manectric and Raikou. Manectric and Raikou both take electric attacks that are aimed at Tornadus, such as Thundurus. Thundurus is actually one of the Pokemon that can take on Tornadus, so you're going to want to be able to take those attacks with something on their team. So Manectric can get the Lightning Rod boost before Mega Evolving, and then can Mega Evolve and get that speed and just be able to go ham on your opponent's team. While Raikou can just switch into attacks as well as being able to just form a Volt Turn combo between Volt Switch and U-Turn with Tornadus. They're just great offensive Pokemon to pair with Tornadus. And of course, Tornadus does have that highly spammable move in Hurricane. It's very spammable because flying isn't flying attacks like Hurricane are really hard to switch into. Think of Draco Meteor. Draco Meteor is really hard to switch into. Of course, Hurricane is weaker, but it's that 30% chance. Tornadus appreciates being able to hit its flying type attack is what I'm trying to say. So a rain team can work. Pokemon like Politoed, which have the Drizzle, you can pair it with a Damp Rock and then have those 8 turns of rain, and then you can of course compare it with Kingdra and Kabutops, all of which have Swift Swim and can abuse that rain. Even Kabutops can Rapid Spin. Kingdra just spams Specs Draco Meteors, drops Dracos for days, spams Specs Hydro Pump in the rain, and of course even Mega Heracross can work well on rain teams because it gets rid of Pokemon that would otherwise give the water types problems, such as Ferrothorn, such as Chansey. That can take hits from most of those mons right there. But those are just a few team options that you can put a Pokemon like Tornadus on. Tornadus appreciates the rain because it can spam its moves. It appreciates having switch-ins for stuff that it doesn't like to take, like Tyranitar, Stone Edge. So it appreciates having Pokemon like a Powdon. Powdon also deals with Charizard and Talonflame, which can give Tornadus some problems. And yeah, lastly, I want to talk about the checks and counters. Now, when a Pokemon has knockoff and access to U-turn and high speed like that, it's kind of hard to find a full-out counter to it. But there are some Pokemon that are checks. Now, Weavile is the first on the list. Weavile is a check to Tornadus. It's not a counter because a counter can switch into any move and live or get out of there unharmed and can deal with the Pokemon. Weavile cannot switch into Superpower. It doesn't like switching into U-turn. It doesn't even like switching into Hurricane with its decent Spadef. But Weavile is a check because it does outspeed Tornadus and can threaten it with the KO from Icicle Crash, as well as the heavy damage from Knockoff. Now, Rotom Wash is another Pokemon that I consider a check and a counter, because it switches in on basically anything from Tornadus, not taking anything from its Hurricane, and can either Thunder Wave it or Will-O-Wisp it, Pain Split up to get that recovery. Same thing with Zapdos. Zapdos is basically an all-around counter to Tornadus, not taking too much from Hurricanes. Of course, this is assuming you're not getting confused to death by Hurricanes, but Zapdos can come in. While it does suck losing its item, it actually benefits Zapdos in some situations, just because Zapdos is typically there to take on Pokemon like Scizor and Bisharp. It's one of the few defoggers that can actually take on Bisharp. So actually losing your item means knockoff is weaker if your opponent has a Bisharp. So it can roost up, it can threaten it with electric type attacks, and it can switch into any one of Tornadus' attacks. And then Spadef Skarmory is also a pretty decent check if the Tornadus is not running a fire move like Heat Wave, because Spadef Skarmory can actually set up on it spikes and hazards. Again, Spadef Tren is also a Pokemon that doesn't take too much from Tornadus. It can set up Stealth Rock, it can go for Toxic, it can go for Will-O-Wisp, it can burn it with Lava Plume. Of course, it does not like losing its item. No Pokemon likes losing their item, but it's still a Pokemon that can switch into repeated Hurricanes. Though eventually with hazards up, as well as knockoff, I consider it a check, not a counter, because it's going to get worn down easily by taking the knockoff, by taking the Stealth Rock, by taking the U-turn, getting rid of its leftovers. Mega Ampharos is probably one of the straight up full counters to Tornadus. Doesn't take anything from its Stab Hurricane, doesn't care about knockoff because it's a Mega. U-turn does not do anything because it's really bulky, and Tornadus cannot really hit Mega Ampharos well. Mega Ampharos threatens it with, or I like to call it Fabio, threatens it with the Stab Electric type attacks. Another Mega that can definitely switch into most moves from Tornadus and also has reliable recovery is Mega Aerodactyl. Mega Aerodactyl, especially in the sand, gets that 1-point Spy special defense boost, doesn't take anything from Tornadus' Hurricane, threatens it with the Ice Bang, with the Stone Edge, and also has Roost as recovery. And again, it doesn't take anything from knockoff because it's a Mega, doesn't take anything from U-turn. It also outspeeds Tornadus, which is very important. And then I also put Bisharp on the list of checks, just because if Tornadus is low enough, an Adamant Life Orb Sucker Punch will blow it back. I think it does like 70% around there if you are Adamant. So Bisharp is definitely considered a check in my opinion. And of course, like Pokemon like Bandit Scizor can also check it if it's low enough. You know, obviously you're going to want to take advantage of the fact, if you're facing a Tornadus, you want to take advantage of the fact that it doesn't have reliable recovery outside of Regenerator, so you want to try and keep your Stealth Rock up on the field. You're probably, if you're using Bisharp, you're probably going to pair it with Keldeo, so go for Scald as many times as possible, burn it, and then work from there. But yeah, that's basically it for the Tornadus-t breakdown video. I hope you guys all enjoyed. Feel free to leave a like. Of course, you can leave a suggestion for what you want to see next. I don't like seeing too many suggestions in the comments because then it's just get filled with do garbage, do that. I like criticism, like constructive criticism. It helps me, but you're also helping someone else who might not know as much as you. So yeah, that's gonna be it, guys. But once again, feel free to leave a like if you enjoyed, share the video, you know, get it out there if you want. Agree. I love your comments. I hope that I listen to some of them. I know that one thing I want to try and do is get some examples from like Showdown or Wi-Fi battles shown up here, but that's something that's going to take a bit more time for me, but I'll eventually do it. But yeah, that's it, guys. So subscribe if you want, and until next time, guys, later.